Welcome, everyone. My name's Sean. I'm from voices.com, and we have our guest Anatol here today.
Hi, everyone. Pleasure to see you all here.
So we can get all on the same page, Anatol. Why don't you tell us a little more about yourself?
So my name is Anatol Silotch. I grew up in Newfoundland, Canada, and I started my voice acting career a whole year and a half ago. And voices.com has been a huge part of my voiceover beginning and success. So that's why I'm here today. I'm happy to be part of this webinar and share some of my experiences with all you guys and any questions you might have.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here today. Anybody, if you have any questions at any time, just write them in the Q&A, and we'll get to them during the webinar today. So, how did you get your start with voices.com?
Well, basically, I was looking for the top voiceover talent websites in the world, and I started my Google search, and a couple platforms came up, but Voices just kind of clicked with me. From the minute I saw them, something about the platform is just very clean. It seems intuitive, and I started using it, and it just seemed natural. Now, at the same time, it seemed like it was one of the biggest ones in the world, which is what I was looking for, because I said, if I want to make it big in this industry, I need, a big platform. And if I can land jobs there, then I'll feel like I'm making it. And another part with them too was the fact that no job is posted that's less than $100. So I liked the fact that they seemed like they had a standard for their talent. So that means something.
Totally. So, what kind of equipment did you start out with? Did you have like a booth yet, or?
So when I first started, I had pretty much just a laptop and some headphones. I went out to Best Buy, just bought a very simple Blue Yeti microphone, USB microphone. I made a pop filter out of a wire hanger and a piece of clothing that I stretched over it and, just custom folded it to the mic. And for my booth, I used a washing machine box that we had. Um, I I had to have some kind of enclosure. A booth is the voiceover thing. So I took this apart, and I first at the beginning put up sheets and stuff like that inside to try and take care of some of the reflections. It didn't work so well, as you can imagine, and I ended up getting some acoustic foam from someone who was just selling it online on Kijiji in the city, and that's when I really started noticing the difference in audio quality. So I had that for my booth, my headphones. I bought an audio interface off of eBay secondhand, um, and yeah, that's pretty much it.
Amazing.
Started
So,
audition.
so now it seems like you have a much more expansive booth. So, is that what's behind you here? Are you in your booth at the moment?
Yeah, so in November, I ended up building my own booth. I was looking at booth options, and uh, it seemed just kind of pricey, honestly, to buy a pre-made booth. And I said I had the tools, and I had my dad able to help me out. So we ended up building our own 6 by 8 foot booth. 5-inch thick walls, soundproofed as best as I could find how to do online, and that's what I'm using now. And it's definitely an amazing upgrade from a cardboard box. I'll tell you that.
Hard to move around though.
Definitely about 1,600 pounds. So
So from that laptop and from the headphones you had now and the oven box, now you have a full booth. And what's your equipment like? Like what kind of equipment do you use now? Obviously, you've upgraded the microphone.
I've definitely changed a little bit. Microphone I'm currently using is an Audio Technica AT4047 SV. It's cardioid, large diaphragm microphone. My audio interface is a Focusrite 2i2, which I've had from the beginning, actually. I haven't changed that. And then headphones, use studio monitoring headphones. I think that's a huge thing for voiceovers that I definitely would recommend, because for my first few weeks I started with just simple earbuds, and that just wasn't going to do it. And then once you switch to studio grade equipment like this, it's a night and day difference of what you can hear in your audio. And I definitely recommend a very flat EQ headphone so you can pick up anything as it is in your recordings. So it doesn't sound one way to you, but actually is, broadcasted a different way to somebody else. And other than that, yeah, I upgraded from my laptop. I built my own computer recently, which was a fun experience, and just pretty much engineered this whole booth and table and my office space.
That's incredible. So, laptop, headphones, computer, booth. That's pretty much all you need. That's what you use right now.
Yeah, it's as simple as that, and a pop filter. Really, that's
Awesome.
pretty much all you need. A few items and a couple $100 is how I started, and I didn't want to break the bank when I started, so I was low on funds and looking for how I could get into it with not spending too much money. So that's the way I started. And then once it started making more sense to invest, then it's a business. You invest more and you make more out of it.
Awesome. So we have a few questions here about the equipment that you use. So we have a question here. What does a flat EQ headphone mean?
Okay, so um, every kind of headphone or monitor, a speaker of some kind, they're going to have their own EQ curve. So essentially, what that means is, everyone pictures an EQ curve. It's basically a straight line, and then at the far left side, I'm not sure if the screen is mirrored, but at your far left will be the low end, and at the far right will be the high end of the spectrum. And so every company manufactures audio equipment with a certain curve to sound a certain way. Now, everyone knows Beats by Dr. Dre. So, for example, they're a very bass heavy headphone. So they'll have a peak or a boost in the lower end. So they'll boost the lower frequencies. So when you hear it, they're a lot more punchy and a lot more bass heavy. A studio equipment, normally you want as flat of a line as possible because now you hear exactly what that person recorded, in this case, yourself. So that way you can adjust. And if you need to, boost certain levels, then you can do so accordingly, and you'll see exactly what it is, that you're outputting. And then it just offers the better way to see what it is exactly that you've recorded.
Much more accurate that much more accurate to what exists.
Yeah.
Also, so we have another question regarding your equipment. What program do you use to edit your
I started with
recordings?
Adobe Audition, and I'm still going strong with them. Um, I know there's, if you want to start with a free program like Audacity or something like that, it's very popular online. I already had Adobe Audition from my past DJ life, so I already had a little tiny bit of audio experience there, and I just continued using the program and found it so good that there was no reason to switch for me.
Awesome. Yeah, there's a whole bunch of them out there, but yeah, Audacity's a good free one. So what mic did you start out with? Just going back to your original setup, did you use your laptop mic?
No, absolutely not. Definitely need to at least get some kind of microphone. Mine was just an inexpensive Blue Yeti microphone from Best Buy. I think it was about $120 or $150, something like that at the time. There was a promo on. But I know there's a lot of people wonder USB versus an XLR type microphone like this. Which one should I get? When I upgraded to this microphone, then that's when I changed with the XLR and got the audio interface. But at first, just because I didn't want to break the bank, I just started with a USB mic, which is very, very convenient if you're traveling or anything like that. And and the quality was good enough for me to start with. So
Awesome. So we have a question from Wayne here. He has a Blue Yeti, so I guess the same one as what you started with. And a Lexicon 2.0 Alpha desktop recording studio and a laptop, but can't get them hooked together to get a recording made. So what is he missing here? Let's try to diagnose Wayne's
uh,
issue here. So you
that
need
might
your
be
mic.
something that might be something that would be easier to look into to after this, just because it's so specific to you, Wayne. I mean, if you want to message me afterwards, I can try and see if I can help out and diagnose what it is that's going on there.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll send out our emails at the end here so we can answer any individual questions. But essentially, microphone, interface, laptop. That's really all you'll need here. So, let's get into kind of how you started working with us. So, what was the first job you received, and how long did it take to land that first job?
So I started about October 12th. Started my auditioning with the voiceover world, and it took me almost exactly 3 weeks to land my first job with Voices. November 1st of 2016 was my first job with them, and once I landed my first, they just started. They just kept coming in, honestly. So really happy to have been able to have that success and not have to take too long to get to that. And I think it was extremely important, especially at the beginning, just to self critique and always go back, analyze your work, see what it sounds like. Sometimes you record something and in that moment it sounds one way, but if you go back even an hour later, it might sound completely different. So going back and critiquing your work, especially at the beginning when you're so new to everything, listen to audio samples online, commercials, everything. Try and draw influence from anything you can because voiceovers are everywhere around us. Just nobody knows that it's a voiceover until define what a voiceover is. So there's plenty of places to look online for examples, and I think that was a big thing for me, especially at the beginning, realizing no, this doesn't sound good enough yet. How can I improve it? And practice with the scripts. Um, you know, I, it's so important to understand your script. So the more practice you have, this is a new field, or at least it was for me. So the more experience you could get with uh, voicing scripts, then the better off you're going to be, because then you have a better chance, of course, of hitting what the client is looking for.
So, did you ever get a coach, or did you just kind of listen, keep your ears open, and practice that way?
The I didn't do any coaching, again, mainly just because of the financial standpoint that I found myself in. My coaching was YouTube and Google. Honestly, there's so many resources out there, and I know it's not the same as a personalized one-to-one approach with a coach. And to this day, I still want to and will at some point get some coaching, because there's things I definitely want to keep working on. And like anything, it's always a self-improvement process. But at the beginning, essentially was just started with Googling and finding out any and every information, all information possible out there regarding voiceovers and how to interpret scripts and what tips the professionals have out there for me.
And did you have any experience before you started on voices, or you just kind of
I didn't
went
have
out?
any official voiceover experience, no. It was the field was suggested to me through an artist. She was a singer and said that I had a very artistic mind, and I was looking for a job, and she suggested voiceovers. I always loved acting and performing as a younger individual. However, I never received any formal training. So basically, it was all self-taught from the beginning, and that's how I got to where I am today.
That's awesome. And with your first demos, did you ever, like, what did you use for your first demos when you first started with us?
So, of course, everyone says you need a demo. That's how you're going to get your work and stuff. So I, again, financially didn't make sense for me to try and go out and ask somebody to make it for me. I already had some DJing experience, so I said, well, if I can make a DJ mixtape, I'm sure I could try and put together a voiceover reel. And when I signed up with Voices, they provide you with a full folder, a list of sample scripts. So I used some of those, and then I looked online as well for some other sample scripts, and then I found there's various sites out there that you can grab some free background music, and just kind of looked to create a certain vibe. So if you want a car commercial, for example, which seems to be a standard for a demo reel, then I wanted that upbeat, pump vibe, and then match a script accordingly. So just fitting a sample script that I found with some free audio, putting it together, and that was basically my first demo. I again looked online for references and for inspiration as well as tips, and the general rule of thumb that I heard was 8 to 12 seconds per spot, and then about a minute for your demo, no longer.
That's perfect. And if anybody watching needs any scripts or demos, again, you can email us at the end, and we'll send some over to you. Um, so with your like with your first couple jobs, I mean, obviously you were new to it. How confident did you feel, and how quickly did you feel like you were a voiceover artist?
Hmm. I don't know how quickly I felt as a voiceover artist. I think that was probably a few months until I felt more confident that way. But I guess at the beginning, like anything, it's kind of almost like a fake it till you make it kind of scenario in a sense, because you can't go into. I booked my first job with Voices on November 1st, and the very next week I had my first live session via Source Connect, which I didn't even know what Source Connect was at the time. And again, I found a free trial online and did it that way for the session. But you can't go into a session, without confidence. Like anything you're going to approach in life, the more confidence you bring to the table, the better you're regarded in whatever it is you do, even if you make a mistake. So I think, approaching it with confidence, knowing maybe you don't have the most experience, but always trying to see if you can, increase the experience before you get there. And then once you do, just treat yourself with confidence and treat, um, regard yourself with confidence, and treat, your clients with respect. And if they say, give me ABCs on this, I said, I'm sorry, I don't know what that means. And it was, well, three options, a first, a second, and a third. I said, okay. And so I did. And, it's not, keep honest, but try and keep confident at the same time.
So from from those humble beginnings now to where you are today. So like tell us what your day is like. How often do you audition? Do you wake up in the morning and check? Do you do it late at night after a long day? Or yeah, what's your typical day like?
So for me, voiceovers is all I do right now at this current moment. And a typical day, I mean, you wake up, and essentially the first thing I do, actually, I would say, is reach for my water bottle, because it's so important to hydrate in this industry, and that was a big thing for me. So I have a water bottle with me wherever I go. But the second thing is check your email, either for jobs that have come in overnight, or messages from clients, pickups, bookings. Find out where your day stands right from the beginning. I try and finish everything that I can the night before, so I start essentially every day fresh. Most of your day, or most of my day, is going to be spent auditioning. um, it depends on, of course, how many auditions come in, but a typical audition might run you 5 minutes. It could be 20 minutes, depending on what research or effort is needed to find out how to deliver it as well as you can. If they're referencing something specific, then maybe I have to go and research videos on that topic, or, what it is that they drew inspiration from creating their sample script, so I can get into that. Um, and then, yeah, it could be 20 auditions a day, it could be 50 auditions a day. I don't treat this as an 8 to 5. um, I work in a weird time zone anyway, so definitely don't treat it as 8 to 5 here. But I go through the auditions throughout the day. A small piece of that is going to be, of course, your bookings, taking care of that. If I have a longer booking, like a long e-learning narration booking, then I'll actually try and leave those towards later on in the evening, just because my view on auditioning is trying to get them in within the first, let's say, few dozen, 2 dozen auditions, being the first 20 people or 30 people to get their audition in. Because, if you're 80 down the line, you don't even know if you're going to get heard. The client might already pick somebody else from the first 30. And I mean, there's time. My quickest with Voices, I think, was 65 minutes from the audition popping up to me auditioning, getting hired, doing it, and receiving a completed payment was 65 minutes. So sometimes bookings happen right away. So that's why I definitely suggest trying to get a good quality audition in as soon as you can.
How long do you typically take doing one audition?
Yeah, so like I mentioned, about 5 to 20 minutes, I'll say, just because of the work that might be involved with the audition. You know, if they said we drew inspiration from these three commercials, I'll watch those three commercials. You know, they might be a couple minutes each. So you already spend 5 to 10 minutes just looking at the reference material, and then you'll practice their sample script. And again, depending on its length, that might take a couple minutes. And then if you need to get into a particular mindset, that might take an additional minute. So, you know, maybe 10 minutes and you have a good quality audition out for, you know, the average spot.
Awesome. And do you do any, so you record it, do you do any editing on it? Like what's your editing process like?
So the big thing, of course, is just being able to give a client a file that you can reproduce later. So for me, I don't do a whole lot of changing or edits in the sense of, you know, equalization or effects or anything like that. For me, I'll just record, you know, a straight dry sample like this, just the slightest compression just to boost the vocal levels a little bit. And if there's, you know, mouth clicks or something like that, I ensure that it's clean and crisp, just good audio quality for the client. Um, you know, you want your audition to be as clean and as good as your final file will be. So that's how I treat my auditions. You know, if you want an audition to be able to receive an okay as a final file, that's how good your audition should be, I think. And that's happened to me in the past, and it's a, you know, it's a compliment when someone says, well, we don't even need you to do it again, the audition was perfect, you know, for a short piece. So
Has that happened often that they just take your audition as the final
not
product?
often, because usually, well, two things. Usually the spots usually aren't that short, let's say. I tend to land more of, you know, explainer jobs and stuff like that, so at a few minutes in length. And B, you usually don't want, or I usually treat it as, you don't really want a whole lot more than, let's say, 20 or 30 seconds worth of sample script per file. I'd rather record, you know, 15 seconds worth two or three different ways to show the client some, you know, vocal range and flexibility and how I think, you know, it might be interpreted, um, to see if one of those hits home versus one take 30 seconds long and it not being what, you know, they think sounds right.
Totally. So what have you had any favorite jobs so far? Like what's been your favorite job you've
My
had so far?
my favorite piece so far would be the Van Gogh pieces that I recorded last year. There was a group of three guys from the Netherlands who were retracing Van Gogh's steps, and can actually see it now on hashtag follow Van Gogh online. The Van Gogh Museum has this, you know, this program where you can go and retrace his steps. And those pieces, we did 3 videos, which started kind of a somber feel and then got, you know, more happy and elated as we went along. They just really moved me, and the way the videography was and the soundtracks that they chose was just, it was really, really special.
That's amazing. So do you I mean that was probably you said it was a three piece. Have you done any very long projects or repeated clients that you've worked with, or is it just kind of one and done?
So the goal, of course, with voiceovers is to have your repeat clients. That should be a goal. And I think when I first started, um, or I know when I first started, that was my goal, to, you know, create some kind of empire where I can audition less but still get an equal amount of work coming in. You know, a greater return of investment, let's say. Um, so yeah, I've definitely had a bunch of repeat clients. My very first month with Voices, that November, I had a repeat. They repeated me a project with me. The very next year, they wanted an update to their e-learning program, and they used me again for that. You might get a repeat client. I had one where, you know, she liked what I did, and then she booked me again the exact same day for another one, and then another two the same week. So they definitely happen for sure, and it's really nice when they do, because, like I said, it's jobs that just come your way without having to audition or anything like that. It's just it's cool to be able to build a relationship like that with the client, and, it's more amiable an experience.
It's like a snowball effect. You start out slow and it kind of just builds over time.
Hmm.
Do you do different accents, or do you kind of just do your regular speaking voice, or maybe, do you have someone you want to show off right now?
uh, I don't show off, but no, it's not that. I mean, I think it's very interesting because there's definitely a common misconception, at least that I've found, that since I've been in this industry, anybody who finds out from my friends that I do this, they'll say, "What accents do you do?" And I said, "Well, 95 or more percent of my work is just this. It's talking with no accents, just me being me. It's just the interpretation of the script that makes a difference." So in terms of accents and stuff, they're there. The arsenal is there if I need to, pull out something. But for the most part, it's just a very non-accented read that I do for most of my pieces.
Awesome. And do you notice that you specialize in this is a question from somebody, that you specialize in a certain area of voice work, or, for example, in like narration or animation or
Hmm.
audiobooks? Do you find yourself working in one specific category a lot?
I do most of my work for explainer style videos. So things that, are a couple minutes long explaining a product or service. That's the majority of my work. And then I would say after that is e-learning style pieces, whether that's short or, 2 hours worth of e-learning content. That probably comes as a close second. But at the same time, that doesn't mean I don't audition for other things, and I do land other jobs, of course, as well. Be it commercials or uh, you know character pieces, anything like that. Those do pop up, just not as much as this for me.
And so if you're doing characters or something, how do you get into character? And what else do you do to prepare your voice before a session?
Um, so the biggest thing for me to prepare, first of all, would definitely be hydrating. That's super important, and especially if I have, like a live directed session coming up. I mean, 30 minutes to an hour beforehand, even though I've been hydrating all day, I'll be chugging another, bottle of water just to make sure I'm extra lubricated with the vocal cords. In terms of warm up exercises, I looked up a few warm up exercises and stuff online, and you can use even something that you find, and it doesn't have to be for everybody, but a tongue twister or something like that that'll just open up the the your mind and your mouth, I guess, to oddly worded phrases. If you have a live session, practice the sample script. You have to find out how you think you're going to interpret it, even though maybe they'll want you to do it a different way, but at least you're, warming yourself up. In terms of getting into character, the most oftenly used thing by me is music. So the easiest example I can think of is through those Van Gogh pieces. Actually, those three videos that we did, the three soundtracks to each one have a very different feel, and I actually use them very often to just play them back to myself before I start auditioning for a piece, for example, and just closing your eyes and letting yourself be immersed in the music. Because for me, I find that I can change my mood uh, easily in that sense through sound that I hear. So I'll do that, and then of course you look at the sample script and see, how is it that A, the client wants you to interpret, and B, or if you don't have that, how do you interpret it? If it's something like I had recently, I was booked for this spot, which was a veteran who had a suicide note that he wrote, and I had just come off auditioning from, this wacky, goofy character piece, and now I see this audition that pops up, and it's basically a suicide note, and your heart just kind of drops because that's a big switch. And how do you get into that character? So, same thing, music, thought, if I was in this position, how would I feel? So when you're on the verge of tears and writing it, which is how I would have imagined it being, that's when you're ready to audition for it. And I ended up landing that piece, and I was happy to be able to help with that one. but it's a very touching thing to be able to get into that mindset. And you need to commit your mind, body and soul and voice into whatever it is you're auditioning or working on.
So, I mean, that goes into one of our questions here. I mean, what was your most difficult gig? Was this one of your more difficult ones to get into character and perform?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the most difficult, just because it was so unique. I don't, I never even expected it to pop up, let alone if it will ever again. I hope it doesn't, in a sense, because of what it was. But yeah, trying to get into that mindset, that was definitely very, very unique. The other one that comes to mind was a piece I did for the Leatherman company. They make basically like a Swiss Army knife, and people started submitting these letters to them, um, about 40 years ago, of how their product saved somebody's life, their life or somebody else's life. And I was reading a piece for a guy actually from Nova Scotia in Canada, whose father and mother had been, driving across the ice in the winter. They fell through and, were essentially drowning. And then the father, grabs his Leatherman, reaches out, digs it into the ice, pulls himself out of the water, and saves himself and his mother. And this was the son's perspective, talking about that. So, getting into that position, into that character, it was a live directed session, and I broke off halfway through it, and because I was, getting into tears. It's You have to commit yourself to the piece, like I said. So they said, no, that's good. We like that. Take your time, whatever you need to do, get into character and voice it, because that's what's going to make it powerful in the end.
100%. So, you mentioned talking to the client. How does it usually work? Getting directions from the clients. I know earlier you mentioned Source Connect. Do you find that they do Skype directed sessions? How do you most often interact with the clients?
If it's a live directed session, the most common for me is direct calls, just straight to like a studio line. Um, so I'm recording like this, and then the other one would be Skype second, and then Source Connect is my third. That's used the least often of those three. And a lot of times, or most of the time, I should say, that they're not, or my pieces, anyways, aren't live directed. Most of them are just, you had your audition, they wanted a friendly and relatable voice, you got the spot, and then they say either A, read it just like your audition, or B, a little more this way, let's say. And then for the most part, it works well on the first go. Every now and then you'll have, a revision or something needed because it wasn't quite what they liked. And if too many problems arise like that, let's say with a new client, um, if you go through two rounds of revisions, so you've done it three times and you're still not hitting it, well, then something seems like there's a disconnect between you and the client in terms of what's going on. So at that point, even if it wasn't a live directed session, I'll make it a live directed session, because I want to make sure that, we're both understanding what it is that we want for the final product.
Do you find a lot of revisions usually, or I mean, obviously they hire you based on your audition, so they have a good idea of what to expect. But do you find them asking for many revisions, or is it kind of usually pretty straightforward?
It's usually pretty straightforward, for sure. It's a very small percentage that actually get revisions, and if so, uh, 98% of the time is because of a script change or something like that. It's usually not, like an error on my behalf, which does happen for sure. Sometimes it slips when you miss something, uh, and then somehow miss it again when you're going through and editing it. But that's extremely rare, and that's why it's so important to have that good self quality control, I think. But for the most part, no, there's not a whole lot of revisions that come up for me, anyways.
And have you ever has a client ever asked you to go into a recording studio and do the project there, or you've done everything from home thus far?
They've asked me about my home setup, and if maybe they had an idea to go somewhere for a session, but I've never had to. I've done everything from home, and I've never had a client disappointed with the audio quality that they've received. So I take pride in that.
Awesome. Um, and so, going back to your profile on Voices, you said didn't really start off with too many demos. Do you revise your profile often? Like, do you make constant updates to your demos? Do you change, your client list and all that? Like, what kind of upkeep do you do to your profile?
So I have, especially as I was starting, I was constantly updating it just because I had such little amount there. So there was definitely more updating. But yeah, I'll still go back and change things and make sure it's the way I want it to look. Nowadays, in terms of demos, definitely try and update those. You know, if not every month, then every couple months, try and add something new and something fresh, at least as your main demo. And just to always have something fresh up there that people can listen to and find you with. And I think that's also a very important thing too. Is voice match with voices. Um, Trying to make sure that you have demos that match the keywords and stuff that are popping up all the time. You'll notice in your auditions, you'll notice certain words that are always coming up. Professional or friendly or intelligent, articulate, those kinds of words. So making sure that you have appropriate demos that hit those tag words, then your voice match score, of course, will go up as well. And that's, I think, important for sure, because then your audition lands higher on a list of auditions. If you have a 100% voice match versus a 60%, even if you recorded it 10 minutes after somebody who had done it, but they only have a 60% match, your audition is going to be above theirs because of your voice match score. So having demos that suitably reflect what's very common out there is something that's very important to look into.
And that goes into like, do you have any more tips for the people watching, or like hints you can give them, to make sure that they're as successful as they could be?
Um, for me, it's like I said, it's not an 8 to 5. So for me, I really wanted to build something out of this. And I think if you want to build a business out of it, you have to be willing to, make those sacrifices, maybe work on the weekends or in the evenings or something. Not everyone's going to be able to do that. But what I'm saying is have the open mind to, you know, perform. That'll make you shine and leave an impression with your clients that, oh, like last night, it was right before dinner and I was booked for a live session, uh, within an hour. That means something to a client, and who knows, might lead to a rebooking down the road. A big thing for me at the very beginning that I wish I had known was definitely how important hydration was. I can't stress that enough. The amount of mouth clicks and time saved just because of being hydrated is so worth it. People probably look at me weird and say, "How do you drink, 8 liters of water a day?" But it's super important, I find, because it saves me so much time and hassle, and quality is of critical importance to me in my recording. So if it makes my life easier, then it, that right there, it makes it easier, and that's a bigger ROI for you. And the other thing, learn your hardware. If you can figure out how to use the same mic but achieve a different sound, learn that. Play, you can do it in auditions, but play with whatever equipment it is you have to find out what you can and can't do with it, and then learn how to be ergonomical with your equipment as well. One thing I didn't know when I started was Adobe Audition. You could remap all your keys to do certain, functions. You can map them to happen with certain keys, and that's huge for me because at the time I was, control this or control that, and it seems like something so minuscule, but you're doing this hundreds and hundreds of times a day, so it adds up. So now I never have to move my hand at all. Everything is in my left and right hand. I have a mouse that has hotkeys on it, and all the other hotkeys are on my left hand. So everything is perfectly accessible without having to make any kind of excess movements. And I think when in this industry, especially, there's so much repetition, use your templates. Voices has a place where you can put in all your templates. Have one for everything that you need, whether it's a different language or a different, a new client or someone that you work with often, or a private audition, something, use the template function and make use of it. So you only have to change what you need to. At the beginning, I was looking at every single audition and then I was previewing it and rereading everything again. It's such a waste of time because you know what you typed, but you're just freaking out because you're so new at this. How do you know, I have to be perfect. I have to make sure it's okay. Make yourself some templates and save yourself all that hassle so you can just hit send audition and not have to preview and worry about that.
That's a good tip. So when you're, how do you choose your jobs? You just do everything that comes your way? Are you really picky with them? And do you do them all at one time, or do you kind of go throughout the day, do one at a time?
Yeah, I heard there are people, for example, that might like to record everything at once and then edit everything later, for example, or something like that. For me, I like to do both. For me, I find it more interesting and it's almost less stressful in a sense. I find, record a little bit, edit. If it's an audition, it's not going to be very long. I'll record it, I'll edit it, I'll send it, I'll move on to the next one. So that gets your audition in quicker than doing, let's say, 5 auditions and then tackling them one at a time. And um, as for picking and choosing, it depends. Voices is good in the sense that you're not limited to what you can audition for. However, the onus is on you to, if it says that they want an authentic 8-year-old girl's voice, I'm not going to audition for that and waste my time, the agent's time, maybe a client's time. Be smart about what you're auditioning for and what you can and can't do. And if, I don't know, if you're sick, if you have a flu and you're auditioning, you're not going to sound the same as you're going to sound once you get over that flu. So reproducibility is a huge thing, and that's just an example. But if you wake up and you're extremely croaky and sound a certain way just by fluke, maybe hold off on that audition and see if you can do something else until your voice is back to speed. Because again, being able to reproduce what you can do, and then let's say you do get that job, you do it right away, and then let's say a month down the road they ask for, we just need 2 words that we need revised. I can't sound like that. I have to redo the whole script now. You make sure that you're creating an easy or a smoother process for yourself and for your client. What else was it you asked? You asked mainly about the picking and choosing. I don't filter based on what the job is. Let's say a commercial versus a character portrayal or a business demo or anything like that. I don't mind doing any of those. I guess audio books are probably what I audition for the least. But also I find that's a whole other thing just because of the way the rate system goes with audiobooks. So that's that. Find out what makes sense to you as a voiceover actor with what you can and can't do. For me, getting 100,000 word script that pays X versus landing, 300 word scripts that pay 2X, return of interest, return of time, it doesn't make sense to me. So, I don't audition for those as much just because I think of how much time it'll take me to do that. And I think that's something too, if you start landing more longer gigs, find out how long it takes you to do 1,000 word script or something like that. So then if you see a job that pops up for 50,000 words, then you'll think, that's going to take me, 300 hours to complete based on my average. And I'm getting paid $1,000 for it. Yeah, $1,000 seems like a lot, but divided by 300 hours, that's only $3 an hour. Now all of a sudden it doesn't make sense. So that's how I look at it.
Awesome. And so, do you have like a dream job you always want to land? Like, do you have something that you're striving towards?
A dream job in the voiceover field, like
Yeah,
a dream spot.
yeah.
Yeah, in a sense. I always loved the idea of acting as a child, and the animated world always seemed really cool to me. So at some point, if I could be the voice of some kind of animated character in an actual movie, I think that really make my day.
um, so you've obviously had a lot of success on the website. And we talked a little bit how about how it snowballs. So what was your trajectory like? Like I know you landed a job pretty quickly, and then it started to snowball a little bit. Can you tell us a little more about what it was like? How fast it took, what kind of jobs you landed. Just what was the trajectory like?
um what was the trajectory like? Well, it it never stopped requiring, my time and effort. Things got easier in the sense that eventually, let's say 6 months down the road, it was a little more relaxed for many reasons. One of which just being that I wasn't as financially pressured as I was at the beginning when I had no money and I was starting this, job, or as I treat it. And, things are a lot different when you don't know how you're going to afford, you know, food on the table versus, okay, now I have some savings. Things are definitely different. One thing I would always, suggest is don't forget or don't get too comfortable though. Especially with voiceovers, it's such a unique field, especially in this sense. I'm not part of any union or represented by anyone. If I don't audition, I don't get the chance to get hired. So the more you audition, the more your voice is out there, the more money you have potential to make. And you don't make money unless you land those gigs. So, I make sure I put in that work and have never stopped that mentality. Always look back at those beginnings. I when I would sleep with my phone on blast next to my ear because if an audition came up, I wanted to wake up, and I did in the middle of the night. I'd run over, I'd turn on my laptop, I'd warm up my voice, I'd do the audition, and I'd go back to sleep. So, I don't think you should ever limit yourself because you are your own success, especially in this field. Sometimes you're going to think that, oh, I was perfect in that audition, and you're not going to get it. And other times you think, well, I think it was all right. And then they think you're perfect. There's a lot of subjectivity that goes on in the field. And, clients may think they only want one thing, and then they find out that, oh, actually, we wanted what you did. But if your voice isn't out there, they don't have a chance to choose it. So I'm not sure if I'm answering the trajectory question very well, but it was definitely a few months of late nights and interrupted sleep before I had a steady sense of security.
No, you answered it great. You answered it great. Thank you. Um, and so I know we have a lot of clients that we work with. Do you work with a lot of big names, smaller names? Like, can you tell us? I know maybe you probably can't talk about all the clients you've worked with, but I mean, are they like small mom and pop shops? Are they large worldwide companies? Maybe you can tell us a little more about that.
It's definitely extremely variable. I mean, a lot of things that I've done have definitely been for things that, let's say, I've never heard of. But then when you do land those gigs with, Pepsi, Samsung, Amazon, American Express, these Dell, any of these companies that are, huge worldwide entities, it's a it's it's a little bit more special, let's say, than just landing the regular job. You know, I always get excited when I land a job. I think it's important to have that, not to get desensitized to, you know, to the field that you're in. Um, However, even if it's, let's say a not very well paying job compared to, something else, but it's a big name, then that's huge. I did a spot for Johns Hopkins Hospital recently, and that it was just so special to me um, with my background that it really means something to you, and it clicks with you in a certain way. So being able to have and make these kinds of connections and do these kinds of projects for these people it's really special, and that goes for any client and any name. When it means a little extra to you, that's a bonus for you. But never forget that you're representing whoever it is that you have a job with. So just because it's not Samsung, you know, don't treat it any differently, because now you're their brand's voice. So they want, a high quality, voice that represents them the way that they want to be represented out there. So definitely try and have that, pride, and give them no less than 100% at any time.
That's a great tip. So we're almost out of time. Maybe we can do a quick rapid round of questions. We can take a look through some of the questions. I'm sorry if we didn't answer your question, but we'll try to get some. So I know there's just little quick questions we can answer, like what is a mouth click?
What is a mouth click?
Yeah.
Uh, Hard to reproduce without listening to your own voice. When you'll go back and listen to your recordings, you'll hear these little, and I really can't reproduce it. It's impossible for you guys to hear it audibly well enough, but it's essentially little clicks. If you guys in your program, like Adobe Audition has a spectral display, which might not make sense to anybody if they don't have that, but that's somewhere that's really visible. You can see exactly. It's essentially just a little spike from clicks in your mouth, whether that's your tongue moving a certain way and creating, popping a little bubble of saliva inside your mouth, or something clicking. I mean, I hear them as they go along, but you see them and hear them a lot more when you play back your recordings. And I make sure I edit out anything like that, because I really think pristine audio quality is of critical importance.
Agreed. And here's another question. What audio file formats are typically delivered to your clients here?
My most standard is 24-bit, 48 kilohertz wave files.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see. Rapid round. Rapid round.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so do you book a lot more? Or sorry, how when you started, was your voice nervous and shaky? And how did you overcome that?
Never nervous and shaky. Like I said, always treat yourself and have that confidence going in no matter what. Um, so not nervous and shaky. However, it definitely doesn't sound the way it does now. If I go back and listen to something that I recorded at the beginning, it probably sounds a little bit more nervous and shaky, but it didn't at the time to me. Um, but also your voice changes over time, and you actually get more confident with what it is you're voicing. So you'll notice your delivery is changing, and you know the little things that you didn't notice in the beginning, you'll notice later on when you go back and look at your work. You'll say, oh, that's what I sounded like. Wow, that's amazing. That's me. And I've had that many times where I go back and have that feeling. So it's really interesting to see.
Well, that's great. Well, and if anybody has any more questions, we'll send out our email addresses at the end here so we can answer anything after this webinar. Anatol, do you have anything to say to everyone, or do you want to promote a website of yours or
Um,
Instagram or anything?
I mean, just thank you for everyone who attended today. If you have any questions, you can go to my website, drsays.ca. And there's a contact form there at the bottom, or you can email me directly. I'll type that out for you guys. But yeah, thank you so much for having me today, and it's been a real pleasure.
Thank you, Anatol. Thank you, everyone, for watching, and we'll see you next time.